Planet Kaharvas was an intimidating place, rugged, wild, and teeming with beasts the likes of which humans had only encountered in their darkest imaginings. Jaden Landry, a human explorer known for his unconventional survival strategies, tightened the straps on his pack and surveyed the scene, feeling the eyes of his alien hosts fixed on him. The HFY, a species of tall, muscular aliens with mottled skin that shifted colors in the light, surrounded him with expressions of mild disdain mixed with curiosity. A warrior people. They measured everything by strength, and they viewed outsiders, particularly humans, as soft and far too dependent on technology. Jaden knew he had already attracted judgment. He could see it in their crimson eyes. And then there was Buzz, the honey badger. Buzz stood at Jaden's feet, compact and unassuming, with his small black nose twitching at the scents carried by the dense alien air. He wasn't much to look at in the eyes of the HFY. With his black and white coat, small size, and curious snuffling, Buzz seemed a peculiar choice of companion in such a deadly place. Roker, the lead HFY warrior, bared his fangs in a twisted smile. "This is the mighty animal you bring to our world," he sneered, looking down at the honey badger as if it were some strange earth insect. "You come to survive among predators, and yet you bring one that could be swallowed whole by even the smallest of them. Tell me, human, is this some earthling jokes?" The other HFY warriors chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. Jaden, however, remained unfazed. He knelt down and gave Buzz a pat on the back. "Don't let his size fool you," Jaden said calmly with a faint smile. "Buzz here has a reputation for tenacity. Where I come from, he's feared and respected. He doesn't know when to give up, and believe me, he's not one for backing down." Roker rolled his eyes, a gesture that looked oddly unsettling on his alien face. "You speak nonsense. No small creature can survive long here. Strength alone rules Kaharvas." He gestured to one of the beasts the HFY kept as hunting companions, a towering, scaled creature with 4 powerful legs and a head crowned with sharp, glistening horns. It growled, exposing a mouthful of jagged teeth. "That is strength." Jaden looked at the creature with a calm expression and shrugged. "Strength is useful, sure, but sometimes sheer willpower counts for more. I'd bet on Buzz here over any of your beasts." The warriors fell silent, unsure how to respond. They were unaccustomed to humans, and Jaden's quiet confidence unnerved them. He had come to Kaharvas to study its predators, observe survival tactics, and, if possible, bring knowledge back to Earth. Yet the HFY found his methods and choices baffling, especially his choice to bring an Earth animal they deemed nothing more than prey. Unconvinced, Roker crossed his arms. "If you're so confident in this creature, prove it. There's a region nearby where even our hunters tread with caution, the Shadowlands. Let's see if this Buzz survives even an hour." Jaden's gaze held steady. He knew the risks, but he trusted Buzz's instincts and unbreakable resilience. He gave a short nod. "Fine," he said. "Let's see what he can do." A transport vessel soon brought Jaden and Buzz to the edge of the Shadowlands, a dark, tangled thicket of alien flora, dense and foreboding. The HFY warriors watched from a distance, curious but certain that this would end poorly for the human and his foolish animal companion. Jaden set Buzz down on the rough, red soil. The honey badger sniffed the air, his tiny claws flexing in readiness. Jaden gave him an encouraging nudge. "Go on, Buzz. Show them what you've got." Not far from where they stood, a creature emerged from the shadows. It was a Vracker, a notorious predator on Kaharvas, known for its agility and brutal hunting skills. With a body covered in bony plates, each step it took was silent and deadly. The HFY warriors leaned forward, watching eagerly, waiting for the inevitable. But Buzz was already on the move. The honey badger advanced toward the Vracker without a shred of hesitation, every muscle coiled and ready. He met the beast with a fierce growl, biting down hard on its leg. The Vracker yelped and stumbled back, unprepared for such audacious defiance. Jaden grinned as he observed Buzz's relentless attacks. The Vracker tried to shake him off, twisting and thrashing, but Buzz held on, gnashing his teeth and clawing furiously, his fierce growls cutting through the silence of the Shadowlands. The HFY warriors exchanged bewildered glances. They had never seen such a small creature face a Vracker with such raw courage. The battle raged on. Despite his size, Buzz fought with unyielding ferocity, dodging the Vracker's swipes and biting relentlessly until the creature finally broke away and retreated into the shadows, bleeding and beaten. Buzz stood his ground, huffing in victory, a stubborn gleam in his eye as he stared into the dark forest, ready for more. Stunned silence fell over the HFY warriors. Roker, who had been so quick to mock, now found himself at a loss for words. The idea that such a tiny earth creature had not only held its ground, but driven off one of their fiercest predators was almost incomprehensible. Jaden called Buzz back, scratching the honey badger's head as he returned. "Told you," he said, looking back at the warriors. "Buzz here doesn't give up. He doesn't care about size or odds. He just does what needs to be done." Roker's expression was unreadable, his pride bruised, his assumptions shattered. He turned to his fellow warriors, the realization dawning that perhaps strength wasn't the only attribute of value in their brutal world. Jaden watched their reactions carefully, a hint of satisfaction glimmering in his eyes. The Shadowlands test was over, but the ripple effect had only just begun. Jaden could feel it, a shift in perception, a dawning curiosity in the minds of the HFY. As they headed back to their camp, Roker approached Jaden, his tone now edged with genuine interest. "This Buzz, he might yet teach us something," Roker said, nodding thoughtfully. Jaden chuckled, scratching Buzz's ears. "Stick around," Jaden replied. "There's more where that came from." The skeptical gaze of the HFY warriors lingered on Jaden and Buzz as they prepared for the next trial. After Buzz's improbable victory over the Vracker, the HFY's amusement had turned into a prickly, cautious curiosity. But now they wanted to know if the Earth creature's resilience had merely been a fluke or if it was, in fact, as relentless as Jaden claimed. Roker, the lead HFY warrior, stepped forward, his expression hardened. One battle does not prove a warrior's worth human. In the Shadowlands, there are greater tests. "Show us more," he declared, his voice a low rumble that echoed across the clearing. He signaled to a group of warriors who were waiting on standby, each with their massive hunting beasts. "Take them to the Crawl Gorge," he ordered, a grin spreading across his face. "Let us see if your earth creature can survive there." Jaden nodded unfazed, his eyes flickering with anticipation. He knew that every trial was meant to push Buzz to his limits, and yet he felt confident in the honey badger's unique brand of fearlessness. Buzz's thick coat bristled as he seemed to sense the upcoming challenge, his eyes darting over the alien landscape with the same alert intensity as his human companions. Within the hour, they arrived at Crawl Gorge, a harsh, craggy chasm notorious among the HFY for its unforgiving terrain and its inhabitants, the Araktar. These were vicious, multi-limbed predators that could cling to the rocky walls and strike from nearly any angle. In Jaden's mind, they resembled a hybrid of a panther and a spider, with whip-like tails and eyes that glowed faintly in the shadows. Despite their terror-inducing appearance, Jaden knew Buzz would treat them the same way he treated any threat, with unyielding aggression. The HFY warriors, perched atop a cliff with a clear view of the gorge below, watched with thinly veiled interest. One of them muttered, "Surely the Araktar will make quick work of the tiny beast." They had no idea that Jaden was quietly counting on their underestimation. Jaden and Buzz entered the gorge carefully, every step echoing against the towering rock walls. Jaden's heart pounded, but he kept his movements slow and deliberate, while Buzz stalked ahead, his body low and taut with anticipation. The Araktar would smell them by now, lying in wait somewhere in the dark. A sudden rustle above alerted them. Buzz paused, his head tilting sharply to the left, and Jaden followed his gaze. Emerging from a crevice was an Araktar, its dark, sinewy form blending with the shadows, and then another appeared just above it. In a flash, They lunged forward, claws extended and teeth bared. Buzz met their attack head-on, with astonishing speed. He dodged the first creature's strike and leapt, catching its leg in his powerful jaws. The Aractar screeched, trying to shake Buzz off, but the honey badger clung tighter, digging his claws into its flesh. Jaden took the opportunity to move closer, prepared to back Buzz up, but he knew the honey badger needed little assistance. The Aractar thrashed wildly, but Buzz's grip held firm. With a savage shake of his head, Buzz tore a chunk of flesh from the creature's leg, forcing it to stagger back. The second Aractar, sensing an opening, lunged for Buzz's back, but Buzz dropped low at the last second, and the creature collided with its injured comrade. Buzz took advantage, spinning and sinking his teeth into the second creature's tail, his jaw clamped like a vice. He shook his head violently, his low growls filling the air. Above, the HFY warriors exchanged stunned glances. They had never seen anything quite like this. Buzz's relentless determination, his unyielding refusal to back down, defied everything they had assumed about such a small earth creature. It was clear he wasn't just fearless. He was utterly ruthless. Meanwhile, Jaden watched the battle with an almost casual confidence. He could see Buzz was in his element, letting his primal instincts take over. The Aractar, though fearsome, were growing frantic as Buzz outmaneuvered them again and again, his relentless assaults chipping away at their resolve. At last, one of the Aractar screeched and fled into the darkness, its tail shredded and dripping with greenish blood. The second, realizing it was now alone, made a last, desperate attempt to claw Buzz, but he dodged the attack and latched onto its throat. With a vicious bite, he ended the fight. The Aractar collapsed, and Buzz stood over it, bloodied but unscathed, his breath steady and unbroken. The gorge fell silent. The HFY warriors, still perched above, looked on in absolute disbelief. Buzz's victory was not a mere survival tactic. It was a declaration, a ruthless demonstration of his capacity to dominate despite any disadvantage in size. Roker's voice finally broke the silence. "This creature is like nothing I have seen." He spoke with an air of grudging respect, his usual sneer absent. He turned to the other warriors. The Earthling was right. Strength is not just found in size. Jaden smirked, giving Buzz a pat on the back as the honey badger shook himself off, casting a glance back at the cliff where their audience stood. "I told you," Jaden said, raising his voice just enough to reach them. "You underestimated him because he doesn't look like what you're used to. But there's more to survival than what meets the eye." The HFY warriors murmured amongst themselves, their former scorn replaced by a budding respect. They were beginning to see that Buzz was something entirely different, a being who could challenge their assumptions and force them to consider qualities they had long overlooked. Strength, after all, wasn't only about physical power. It was about resilience, tenacity, and a fierce unwillingness to back down. As Jaden and Buzz made their way back to the camp, Roker stepped forward to meet them. His stance was more respectful than before, and he inclined his head slightly, a rare gesture among the proud HFY. "You have proven your worth," he said, his voice somber. "This Buzz, he fights with a fire we did not expect. I am beginning to think he has something to teach even us." Jaden nodded, catching the shift in Roker's tone. "There's always more to learn, Roker," he replied, "especially when you're willing to look past appearances." Buzz, for his part, merely let out a soft huff and padded onward, undeterred by the encounter, as if nothing unusual had happened. But for the HFY warriors watching him disappear into the dusk, something had indeed changed. Their perceptions had been upended, and an ember of curiosity had ignited in their minds. A curiosity that would lead them to question everything they thought they knew about survival. And as night fell over Kaharvas, the human and his honey badger had, without even intending it, become symbols of a strength the HFY had never encountered before. As the glow of Kaharvas' 3 moons illuminated the camp, whispers of the day's events spread among the HFY. Warriors who had once mocked Buzz's small size now spoke with an edge of respect, their voices colored by disbelief and admiration. Even Roker's hardened pride was shaken and he found himself wrestling with an urge to witness what the honey badger could accomplish against an opponent truly worthy of the Xythar's highest regard. It was then that he proposed the unthinkable. "Let us see if the Earthling's beast can face our queen." Jaden arched an eyebrow. The queen beast? Roker's gaze was intense, his voice a grave murmur. "She is no ordinary predator. The Xythar revere her as a force of nature, a creature from the depths of the sanguine crags, where even we dare not tread alone. She commands all other predators, and none dare challenge her." Around them, the gathered Xythar warriors shifted uneasily. None had ever seen the queen beast and returned unscarred. Jaden understood that this creature was not merely a test of strength, but of survival itself. Buzz, however, sniffed the air, his small nose twitching as if he sensed a challenge. He stared back up at Jaden unblinking. After a brief silence, Jaden nodded. "Buzz is up for it," he replied confidently. "Take us to her." By dawn, a party of warriors led Jaden and Buzz across the endless crimson plains toward the Sanguine Crags, an ancient terrain scarred by eons of volcanic eruptions and weathered rock formations. Sharp, towering cliffs loomed over narrow passages, casting long shadows over the alien landscape. Deep in the crags, the queen beast awaited. As they descended into a valley covered in thick, sinewy vines, Jaden felt an unsettling calm. The air was thick with the scent of blood and musk, a silent reminder of countless battles and predations. The Xythar warriors fanned out along the edges, cautious and watchful. They wouldn't interfere. This was a battle to be faced alone, as dictated by Xythar tradition. Buzz stood poised, claws flexed and teeth bared. His black eyes gleamed with a fierce intelligence, one that Jaden had come to recognize over their years together. Suddenly, a rumbling sound echoed through the valley, followed by a heavy thud. The queen beast had arrived. She was massive, nearly twice the size of any creature Jaden had seen on Kaharvas. Her thick, scaled hide was a dark emerald hue, blending seamlessly with the dense foliage. Two sets of burning yellow eyes glared from a broad, heavily armored head, and her massive claws left deep gouges in the earth with every step. Muscles rippled along her shoulders as she bared her serrated fangs, letting out a resonant growl that shook the very ground. The Xythar warriors inhaled sharply. Roker, despite his hardened demeanor, looked at Jaden with a hint of concern. "Human," he murmured. "Perhaps it is not too late to reconsider." But Jaden's focus was already on Buzz, who showed no sign of fear. The honey badger advanced, hackles raised, his low growl meeting the queen beast's roar. Jaden trusted Buzz's instincts and knew better than to interfere. The queen beast lunged forward, jaws snapping, her sheer size making her a looming wall of scales and claws. Buzz leapt to the side with surprising agility, avoiding her deadly strike. He darted in, sinking his teeth into her ankle, his small body a blur of movement. She let out a screech, attempting to shake him off, but Buzz held fast, digging his claws into the queen's scales. Frustrated, she whipped around, her massive tail smashing the ground with a force that sent debris flying. Yet Buzz refused to yield. With a burst of strength, the queen beast reared onto her hind legs, but Buzz only climbed higher, using her scales as leverage to reach her shoulders. Jaden could see the frustration mounting in her eyes. She wasn't accustomed to prey that fought back with such ferocity. The Xythar warriors gasped, their admiration turning to awe. In one desperate attempt to dislodge him, the queen beast rolled her body, crashing down on her back with an earth-shaking impact. Dust and fragments of rock flew into the air, momentarily obscuring the battlefield. The warriors braced themselves, holding their breath, fearing Buzz might have been crushed. But as the dust settled, there he was, still clinging to the queen's hide, claws and teeth embedded in her thick scales. Buzz was relentless, his jaws locked as he clawed his way closer to her neck, tearing at her armor with unyielding ferocity. The queen beast bellowed, her cries now tinged with a note of panic. She lashed out wildly, but Buzz anticipated each move, dodging and biting, his growls growing louder and more defiant. Slowly, inexorably, Buzz began to wear her down. Jaden could see it in her movements, her once powerful strikes growing slower, her breathing labored. She tried to shake him off one last time, but Buzz was faster, scaling up to her head and latching onto the back of her neck. He bit down hard, refusing to relent, his entire body vibrating with determination. The queen beast let out a final, deafening roar that echoed off the crags. And then, with a shudder, she collapsed onto her side, utterly defeated. Buzz released his grip, his small chest heaving as he stood atop the fallen predator, his gaze steady and unafraid. The queen lay motionless beneath him, her eyes closed in submission. The HFY warriors erupted into a stunned silence. Roker stared, his usual composure shattered, his crimson eyes wide with disbelief. This small creature, whom they had deemed unworthy, had bested the most formidable predator on their planet. Jaden took a step forward, his heart pounding with pride. "I told you," he said, his voice carrying over the silent warriors. "Size doesn't determine strength. It's courage, endurance, and the will to face any opponent without backing down." Roker finally found his voice, a deep respect resonating in his words. "You were right, human. This creature, this honey badger, is more warrior than we ever understood. He has proven something to us all." The HFY warriors nodded, their expressions humbled and admiring. Buzz padded over to Jaden, his fur matted but his eyes shining with a calm satisfaction. Jaden knelt down, scratching behind Buzz's ears. "Not bad, buddy," he murmured. "You just earned yourself a place in HFY legend." As they left the crags, Jaden knew that Buzz's actions had left a lasting mark on these warriors. No longer would they dismiss a creature's worth based on appearance or size. They had witnessed a new kind of strength, one that went beyond physical might, a strength rooted in resilience and an unbreakable spirit. And though the queen beast's roar had fallen silent, the lesson she and Buzz had taught the HFY that day would echo across Kaharvas for generations to come. The journey back to the HFY village felt markedly different. Jaden and Buzz were no longer met with scornful glances or skeptical whispers. The warriors who had once laughed at the cute, small earth creature now walked with their heads bowed slightly, acknowledging Buzz's formidable spirit and Jaden's confidence in him. Even Roker, the proudest among them, watched the honey badger with a profound new respect. As they entered the village, a crowd had gathered, word of the queen beast's defeat spreading faster than wildfire across the planet. Young and old alike had heard of the honey badger's tenacity, of his unmatched determination against an enemy most HFY feared. The villagers parted to let Jaden and Buzz through, their gazes a mix of wonder and admiration. They chattered among themselves, recounting the battle as though they had been there to witness it. An elder HFY, cloaked in vibrant red robes adorned with intricate symbols of their ancestors, stepped forward, extending a gnarled clawed hand toward Jaden. She was known as Maore, the Wise One, and her voice carried a gravity that silenced the crowd. "Earthling," she began, her tone thoughtful, "your creature has achieved what even the fiercest HFY could not. To conquer the queen beast is to lay claim to a legend. Today, your honey badger has earned a place among us." She looked down at Buzz, who met her gaze with calm indifference, his fur still matted from the battle, but his spirit undaunted. Jaden inclined his head respectfully. "Buzz isn't like other creatures," he replied. "He's more than just brave. He's relentless. That's his strength. He doesn't understand fear the way others do." Maore nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as she considered his words. "In our world, strength is measured by physical might, by the power of one's claws and the sharpness of one's fangs. But your creature has shown us a different truth, that true strength lies not only in the body but in the spirit." She turned to the warriors and villagers gathered around. "This honey badger has defied our understanding, shown us our own limitations. Perhaps we have been too narrow in our views." Roker stepped forward, the flicker of pride in his eyes now softened by admiration. "I was wrong to doubt you, human," he admitted. and I was wrong to doubt him. You have brought us a lesson we sorely needed." He hesitated, then placed a hand over his heart, a gesture of respect in HFY culture. "It would be an honor for us to learn from such a creature, if he will allow it." Jaden grinned, glancing down at Buzz, who was sniffing the ground for something interesting, completely unbothered by the attention. "I think Buzz would be happy to show you his ways," he said, chuckling, "as long as you don't mind a few scars." That earned a laugh from Roker, who nodded. "We will wear them proudly. He has taught us that survival requires more than brute strength. It requires cunning, resilience, and a refusal to yield. Such lessons are rare." The HFY had never openly admired creatures from other worlds, much less sought to emulate them. Yet as the days passed, Buzz became something of a legend among the warriors. They watched him intently, studying his tactics and his fearlessness as he roamed the alien landscapes around the village. Young warriors would approach, asking Jaden questions about Buzz's battles back on Earth, and listening with rapt attention as Jaden recounted tales of Buzz fending off lions and cobras, creatures that sounded as fantastical to the HFY as the queen beast did to humans. Jaden noticed that Buzz's influence had begun to shift the mindset of the warriors. Training sessions became less about brute force and more about strategy and adaptability. Warriors who had once prided themselves on overpowering their foes now began to practice evasion and endurance, recognizing the value of outlasting their opponents. Buzz had inspired a new way of thinking, a shift in values that would shape the HFY's approach to combat for generations. One evening, Roker approached Jaden at the edge of the village. He looked out over the twilight horizon, the sky painted in hues of violet and amber as the distant suns dipped below the rocky peaks. "Jaden," he began, his voice unusually soft, "you and Buzz have given us a gift. But I must ask, why did you bring him here? Why would you risk your companion's life to prove a point to a people you barely know?" Jaden considered the question, his gaze fixed on the fading light. "I brought Buzz because he deserved to be seen for what he is," he replied. "Back on Earth, people underestimate him all the time. But Buzz doesn't care about their opinions. He knows his worth, even if they don't." He looked at Roker. "I guess I wanted you to see that too. To show that real strength isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's the quiet, stubborn ones you have to watch out for." Roker nodded thoughtfully, as if Jaden's words had struck a deep chord. "In our world, strength has always been defined by dominance, by overpowering others. But perhaps we have been wrong to dismiss creatures like your honey badger. Perhaps strength is more complex than we ever imagined." The two stood in silence, watching as Buzz ambled through the underbrush, unbothered and entirely in his element. He had no need for the HFY's approval, no desire for praise. He was content just being himself, and that, Jaden realized, was the source of his power. As the moons rose higher, casting a silver glow over the village, Mare gathered the warriors and villagers around the central fire. She gestured for Jaden to join her and waited until the murmurs had quieted. "Tonight," she announced, her voice carrying across the gathering, "we celebrate a creature who has taught us more than we ever expected. The Earthling's honey badger has reminded us that true strength lies in the heart, in the courage to face fear without flinching and to persevere, no matter the odds." The HFY raised their hands in salute, a solemn gesture of respect. Jaden watched as they acknowledged Buzz's spirit, and he felt a surge of pride for his companion, who had brought an entire warrior culture to a moment of reflection and change. Roker approached Jaden one final time, his tone reverent. "Buzz will be remembered here for as long as our stories are told," he said. "And you, too, Earthling. You have shown us that strength comes in many forms, and that wisdom can be found in unexpected places." Jaden nodded, feeling the weight of their words. He had come to Kaharvas to prove a point, but he realized that he and Buzz had done much more than that. They had given the HFY a new perspective, a legacy of resilience and courage that would endure long after they were gone. As they prepared to leave Kaharvas, Jaden looked down at Buzz, who was obliviously chewing on a piece of alien root. He grinned, giving his fearless friend a scratch behind the ears. "Looks like you're a legend now, buddy," he whispered. Buzz just snorted, entirely uninterested in his newfound fame. To him, he was simply doing what he had always done, facing challenges head-on, refusing to back down, and living life on his own terms. And as they left the village under the light of Kaharvas's moons, Jaden knew that he would carry this journey with him forever, a testament to the strength of one small, stubborn creature who had changed an entire world.